All right, so as of April 2026, Canada's immigration rules have seen some pretty important updates. We're going to break down 8 key changes that could seriously impact everything from renewing your passport to sponsoring your family. So let's get right into what these new rules actually mean for you.
Are you thinking about renewing your passport anytime soon? Maybe you're hoping to sponsor a parent to come visit. Or hey, maybe you're in the middle of planning your big move to Canada? If any of that rings a bell, you are definitely going to want to pay attention.
That's because this April, the rulebook for all of those things has changed. We're going to give you the rundown on 8 key updates right now so you're completely in the loop.
Okay, so here's what we're covering. We'll kick things off with changes that affect current citizens. Passport and citizenship costs. Then we'll dive into new rules for families, a really big shift in power for provincial nominee programs, and wrap up with updates for workers and newcomers.
All right, let's start with what's new for current Canadian citizens. And honestly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Think of it this way. Fees are going up, but you're also getting a brand new service guarantee in return.
So, for the first time since way back in 2013, passport fees are getting a bump. A 10-year passport will now run you $163.50, and a 5-year one is up to $122.50. And the official reason for this? Well, it's what you'd expect: inflation and the rising costs of producing these super secure documents.
But here's the good news, the trade-off I mentioned. Along with that price hike, the government's introducing a new service guarantee, and the number you need to remember here is 30. The new policy is pretty simple, and honestly, it's a great one. 30 days or it's free. If your completed passport application takes any longer than 30 business days to process, you get a full refund. Just a heads up though, that 30-day clock doesn't include mailing time. Now, for anyone applying for citizenship, there's a small fee increase here too. But what's really interesting is that the main processing fee, that big $530 chunk, hasn't changed at all. The only thing that's gone up is that smaller right of citizenship fee, and it's just by a few bucks, about $3.25. So the new total for an adult application is now $653.
Moving on, let's talk about families. The Super Visa program has some pretty significant new rules, and they're all about making it more flexible for you to sponsor your parents and grandparents to come to Canada.
And for anyone who isn't familiar with it, the Super Visa is a really fantastic tool. It's basically a long-term, multi-entry visa that lets the parents and grandparents of Canadians or permanent residents visit for up to 5 consecutive years at a time. It's a game changer for long family visits.
So here's the big news. Meeting the income requirement just got a whole lot easier. First, as a sponsor, you can now use your income from either of the last 2 tax years to qualify. That's a big help. And even better, if your income is still a little short, you can now actually include the income of the parent or grandparent who's visiting to help you meet that financial threshold.
Okay, buckle up for this next one because it's a pretty major policy shift. We're talking about a change in the balance of power between the federal and provincial governments when it comes to immigration. The bottom line, provinces now have the final say on some really key factors for their nominees.
So, let me break down how this works. In the past, a federal officer could pretty much independently decide if they thought a provincial nominee really intended to live in that province. Now, that whole assessment is the province's job. This is a huge deal because it means the provinces can be way more strategic, picking immigrants who they know are a perfect fit for their local economy. If a federal officer has some concerns, they now have to talk to the province first, and the province gets the final call. So, what does this actually mean for you as an applicant? Well, it means you should expect provinces to dig a lot deeper. They're going to look much more closely at your genuine ties to the province and what your economic plans are before they give you that nomination. That connection to the province is now more critical than ever.
All right, last section. Let's cover a few important updates for workers and newcomers. These changes touch on everything from settlement services and rural work permits to some new provincial fees.
Okay, here's a really key change for economic immigrants. It used to be that they had unlimited access to federally funded settlement services. Well, that's changing. Starting this April 2026, that access is now limited to your first 6 years after getting permanent residence. And then, that window is going to get even tighter, shrinking down to just 5 years starting in April 2027.
Now, for anyone looking to work in a more rural part of Canada, there's a big update to the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. To help businesses in these areas find the labor they need, employers can now have up to 15% of their workforce be low-wage temporary foreign workers. That is a pretty significant jump up from the old cap of 10%.
And one last, very specific update for you. If you're applying to the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, also known as the ScienTP, be aware of a new fee. As of April 1st, there's now a $500 application fee for all worker categories.
Okay, so let's do a super quick recap of what we've covered. We've got higher fees for passports and citizenship, but that's balanced by that awesome new 30 days or it's free passport guarantee. Families have a lot more flexibility when using the super visa. Provinces now have much more power over who they nominate. And finally, there are new time limits on settlement services, but also new opportunities for workers in rural areas.
And all of this brings us to one final thought. You know, as Canada's immigration policies keep changing and evolving, it really makes you wonder, is the system actually getting fairer and more responsive to people's needs? Or is it just getting more and more complex to navigate?